Every day you wake up, and without even noticing it, you start paying debts. Debts nobody ever asked you to pay. Other people's opinions. Old regrets you've replayed 1,000 times. Expectations that were never even real. And every single payment steals another piece of your one life. Marcus Aurelius warned about this nearly 2,000 years ago. Almost nobody listened. Stop, read that last part again. Because today, you're going to listen. Welcome back to Stoic Virtus. If you understand what I'm about to give you, and you actually let it change you, you will never spend another sleepless night fighting a battle that was never yours to fight. 2,000 years ago, in Greece and in Rome, a handful of thinkers built something that was never meant for comfortable people in comfortable rooms. One had been a slave. One buried children he loved more than his own life. One ruled the most powerful empire on earth while plague and betrayal tried to take it from him, every single day. They didn't write to sound wise. They wrote because it was the only thing keeping them standing. They called it Stoicism, not a philosophy for quiet libraries. A survival manual, written by people who had every reason to give up and simply refused to. 10 lessons. 10 debts you've been paying your whole life, without ever agreeing to. Let's cancel them, one at a time. Lesson 1. The oar that was always yours. Picture a rower, alone on a grey river. The current is stronger than he will ever be. He cannot slow it, cannot argue it into a gentler mood. But he holds an oar, small, simple, entirely his. Epictetus said nearly all human suffering comes from one confusion, mistaking the current for the oar. Your reputation, the current. Someone's mood, the current. The outcome you're praying for, the current. Your effort, right now, the oar. Most people spend their whole life gripping the current, exhausted, furious, it won't obey. Let it go. Pick up the oar instead. But the most dangerous debt you're paying isn't the current. It isn't even close. We'll get there. This is where almost everyone loses. Lesson 2. The verdict you signed in the dark. You didn't feel the pain of what happened to you today. Not directly. You felt the verdict your mind reached about it in less than a second, without a trial, without a single witness called. Someone doesn't text back. Within a breath you've ruled you're unwanted. A plan falls apart. Within a breath you've ruled you're cursed. The event took 3 seconds. The sentence you handed yourself has been serving time for years. Epictetus knew this better than most. His own master broke his leg, and legend says he simply looked up and said, "You will break it." Calm, almost curious. Not because he felt nothing, because he had already separated the event from the verdict. Centuries later, modern psychology would build entire therapies around this exact idea, that it is rarely the event that wounds us. It's the story we wrap around it, in the first 3 seconds, before we've even checked if it's true. So ask yourself, honestly, the next time something wounds you, is this the truth? Or is this simply the fastest verdict my mind knows how to reach? Because it's reached it 1,000 times before. You are allowed to appeal your own rulings. Most people never think to. Think about the last time a stranger's comment ruined your entire afternoon. The comment lasted 5 seconds. The ruined afternoon lasted 6 hours. That math should bother you. This is exactly why modern therapists still teach a version of this 2,000 years later. Separate the fact from the story. Write down what actually happened in one plain sentence, no adjectives. Then write down the verdict you attach to it. Most of the time you'll find the second sentence is doing all the damage, and the first sentence barely hurt at all. Lesson 3. The glass that needed the fire. A glassblower doesn't apologize to the flame. He holds the raw, shapeless material directly inside it, because nothing about that material will ever hold a form, hold light, hold water, until the heat forces it to become something. Marcus Aurelius ruled through a plague that killed thousands a day in Rome. He buried friends. He buried his own children. And still, at night, in a journal he never meant for anyone else to read, he wrote himself one line, again and again. What stands in the way becomes the way. Not a slogan, a method. Every disaster placed in front of him got fed directly into what he was trying to become. Your setbacks are not verdicts on your worth, no matter how convincing they sound at 2 in the morning. They are temperature, and nothing worth becoming happens without it. Ask a different question. Not, why is this happening to me? Ask, what shape is this heat trying to pull out of me? There's a version of you on the other side of every fire you've ever walked through, and that version didn't exist before the heat touched you. You can't meet them by avoiding the forge. You only meet them by staying in the flame long enough to be reshaped by it. Sit with that for a second. Lesson 4. The pack that raised you. A wolf raised inside a starving, desperate pack learns to snarl over every scrap of food, even when there's enough to go around. A wolf raised inside a strong, disciplined pack learns to hunt with patience, because it has never had to fight its own family just to eat. Neither wolf chose its pack, but both wolves became it. Seneca warned his students of exactly this, centuries before anyone called it psychology. We don't leave certain company unchanged. He said, the same way we don't leave a sick room without breathing some of the same air. Look honestly at the 5 rooms you spend the most time in. What are they quietly teaching you is normal? If mediocrity gets shrugged off around you, some part of you is being trained to shrug it off too, whether you agreed to it or not. You don't need to burn a bridge tonight. You only need to ask yourself one question. Which pack am I actually running with? And remember the other half of this truth, the part most people conveniently forget. You're not only absorbing the pack around you, you're also, whether you like it or not, part of somebody else's pack too. Someone nearby is quietly becoming a little more like you, right now, whether you've noticed it or not. Here's the mistake that ruins most lives. Lesson 5. The 5 minutes that decide the day. There's a particular kind of sailor who checks the rigging before the sun is even up, not because someone is watching, because he understands the ship doesn't care how he slept. Marcus Aurelius argued with his own blanket some mornings, exactly the way you do. He wrote about the pull of staying warm instead of rising to do the work he believed he was built for. If the most powerful man alive had to talk himself out of bed, you are not weak for feeling that same pull. You are simply human. You'll see the same pattern in almost every person who's ever built something extraordinary. The founder answering messages before 6. The athlete on the empty track before the city wakes up, not because mornings are magic, Because winning the first small negotiation with yourself makes every negotiation after it easier. The difference was never willpower gritted through clenched teeth. It was a sharper question, asked the night before. Not, wouldn't it feel better to stay warm? Instead, what was I actually built for? And is 5 more minutes really the answer I want to give myself today? Notice something else about that sailor. He doesn't check the rigging once and feel proud for a week. He checks it every single morning. Because the ocean doesn't remember yesterday's discipline. Neither does your life. Every morning is its own negotiation. Won fresh or lost fresh. Lesson 6. The storm you survive before it arrives. There was once a merchant who, before every voyage, sat quietly in his own home and imagined the ship going down, the cargo lost, the years of work gone in a single bad night. His rivals thought it morbid. What if tomorrow everything you're building disappeared? Not from a mistake you made, just from a storm you never saw coming. Would you still be standing? The merchant asked himself that question long before it ever happened. So when the storm actually came, as it eventually does for everyone, he was the only one still standing. Because some part of him had already survived it 100 times, in his own mind, first. Seneca called this sending the mind ahead into difficulty, so nothing arrives as an ambush. This isn't pessimism. A pessimist just waits to be crushed. This is closer to checking every buckle on your armor, not because you want the battle, because if it comes anyway, you'd rather meet it standing. Try it once this week. Sit honestly with the thought of losing something you take for granted, not to torture yourself, just to notice you're still standing, even inside the thought of it. There's a strange side effect to this practice, one almost nobody mentions. The sunrise looks different to the sailor who has already imagined the ship going down. He isn't grim about it. He's grateful, in a way the other sailors, still asleep in their comfortable certainty, never quite managed to be. Lesson 9 changes everything. Hold on to that. Lesson 7. The work no one is watching. There was a street musician who built his entire sense of worth around the size of the crowd. Big crowd, he felt like a genius. Empty street, he felt like a fraud. It took him decades to notice the one thing that never actually changed: his skill. Only his sense of himself moved, handed over to strangers who were never thinking about him at all. Epictetus drew a hard line between what belongs to you and what belongs to everyone else's opinion. Applause sits entirely on the wrong side of that line. It was never yours. It arrives and leaves for reasons that have nothing to do with the actual worth of what you made. Ask yourself honestly, if no one would ever know you made it, would the work still feel worth making? If yes, you found something real. If no, you found exactly where the applause quietly became the whole point. Build the version of your work that would still feel worth having, even if no one ever clapped for it again. That version, and only that version, was ever really yours to keep. Lesson 8. The letter you keep meaning to send. There was a photographer who spent 40 years capturing other people's biggest moments. Weddings, homecomings, funerals. He never once developed a single photograph of his own life. Seneca knew this feeling too. He was exiled once, stripped of everything, and rebuilt his life from nothing. Years later he was ordered to end his own life, by the very emperor he had once mentored. By every account, he faced it without begging for more time. On the morning the photographer finally understood how little film he had left, he didn't panic. he felt something closer to relief. For the first time, every remaining frame actually mattered. Most life isn't lost to one dramatic tragedy. It's given away quietly, a day at a time, to delay and the comfortable assumption that there will always be more of it later. Ask yourself, just once honestly, would this grudge matter on your last day? Most things shrink instantly, once you place them next to the true size of the hourglass. The photographer didn't need more time in the end. He just needed to stop assuming there would always be more of it. That's the whole trick, and it costs nothing to start today. Marcus Aurelius would call this slavery. Lesson 9. The room no siege can reach. Picture an old walled city under attack, arrows raining down on the outer wall for weeks. But deep inside, past wall after wall, sits a chamber no army has ever reached. Not because it's guarded well, because it was never built anywhere their weapons could touch. The Stoics described something identical, living inside every person. An inner room that circumstances cannot storm, unless you personally open the gate. Insults, betrayal, bad news, all of it can hammer the outer wall forever. None of it reaches the room where you decide who you actually are, unless you hand over the key yourself. This is the most dangerous debt of all, the one we promised earlier. Not money, not time, your own permission handed out too easily to anyone loud enough to demand it. That room isn't guarded by luck. It's built one stone at a time. Every time you feel provoked and pause half a second longer than the provocation expected you to. Lesson 10. The fence you forgot was open. There was a horse that lived its entire life inside a small enclosure, and after a few years stopped testing the fence altogether. Not because the fence had grown stronger, because the horse had simply stopped checking. So much of what confines you was never actually locked. It's just gone unchecked for so long that you mistook the habit of staying for a wall that was never really there. The Stoics kept returning to the same four things: courage, self-control, fairness, and clear thinking, as the only real currency a free life is built from. Everything else, every expectation you never agreed to, every cage handed to you as the acceptable price of comfort, is a debt you were never actually required to pay. Freedom is rarely one dramatic leap over the fence. It's usually a door left open a little wider, one honest decision at a time, until one day you simply walk through it. Nobody builds a cage for you all at once. It's built slowly, one small accommodation at a time, one swallowed opinion, one abandoned interest, one quiet surrender to what was expected instead of what was true, which means the door out is built the same patient way. One small refusal at a time, 10 lessons, one thread running through all of them. You do not control the river, the verdict, the fire, the pack, the morning, the storm, the crowd, the hourglass, the siege, or the fence. You never did. You control the oar, the appeal, the shape the fire is pulling out of you, the pack you choose to run with, the 5 minutes that start your day, the storm you rehearse before it arrives, the work you'd still do with no one watching, the letter you finally send, the gate you refuse to open from the inside, and the fence you finally test again after years of forgetting it was never locked. None of this was ever supposed to be comfortable. Comfort didn't keep Marcus Aurelius standing through plague and betrayal. It didn't keep Seneca writing through exile, or Epictetus teaching for decades after actual chains. What kept them going was the plain, unglamorous knowledge that their days were limited and owed to no one. You are going to run out of mornings. So am I. Neither of us knows exactly when. But today, this exact ordinary day, is the only one you have ever actually been given. To finally start paying down the right debts instead of the wrong ones. If this changed even one way you see your life, don't let this be the last lesson, because the next one may arrive too late. This has been Stoic Virtus. Subscribe and let the next lesson find you before life decides to teach it to you the hard way instead.